Hi, I'm Moshe.
And I'm Polly.
And this is The Human Collective. Welcome to tonight's show, episode 8.
Yeah.
Episode 8, feeling great. I want to
We're
thank
here.
everybody for tuning in tonight. This has been quite a journey for us. Oh, we forgot our thing. Here, let's just do it live on the show. So we had this idea. Let's restart that. Ready? It didn't work out as well as I thought it would. So Polly and I had this idea to put some...
Moshe had the idea.
Yeah, it was my idea. To put some tape on our mouths and then rip the tape off and then kind of go into our spiel.
To represent like being censored.
Yeah, basically the past couple days after our last episode with Christy Gorkowski, which I hope everyone tuned into that show. If you didn't, the show is still on YouTube and it will be. Yeah, please check it out. Some people called it controversial, Some people called it a work of magic. Whatever the case. Inspiring.
Yeah, we touched lives.
We did, and that's the goal of this show. One thing that I'll say about podcasts is a lot of people use it as a platform to just speak their mind and their opinion, which is fine. But we more so want to do that with our guests, basically giving a voice to the voiceless.
Yeah.
So someone like Christy, who's been banned from so many different platforms.
Yeah, she's constantly being censored and she can't even get her message out there. So someone like that, it's really important to have a voice and have a place and a platform like this. So that's what we do here at Human Collective.
Yeah, so Human Collective kind of worked as a shield because, in essence, it's not our opinion. And also doesn't mean... So if we have someone like Christy on the show, it doesn't necessarily mean that we agree with everything she says.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, I wouldn't consider myself a Trump supporter. I try and stay in the middle from a more bipartisan approach. But I knew that she had something to say, and it came from a good place. And I would consider her a true patriot in what she does. So the Human Collective gave her the opportunity to do that. So, and it takes a lot of bravery and what we call in Hebrew gazachkas to actually do that, because you're gonna, anytime you're that opinionated, you're gonna suffer some scrutiny. You're gonna have to deal with some opposition. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And we've even gotten that a little bit ourselves. I lost followers on my personal Instagram account because I promoted the episode and
I had trouble just promoting that we were going to have her there. I couldn't even get it on our Instagram page, and I had some trouble getting it on Facebook as well, just letting people know that we're having Christy and she's going to be talking about Trump and being conservative and being trans. And we were having a lot of issues. And then afterwards we had some backlash as well.
Yeah, I mean, people just responded negatively to it. Not all. I mean,
there's a lot of loving people, a lot of people that were giving their support.
Yeah.
But I just think it's really interesting that the whole reason we did this podcast was so that we could give a platform to people and also let our viewers and our listeners have like a way that they can see people who think differently.
Right. And people they might not normally seek out.
Yeah.
So if we stay right in the middle with the show and we're not on one side or the other of the fence, then we can have any guest on we like, because we're not playing sides.
Mm-hmm.
So next week we may have on a liberal, someone who is, and also you have to be careful when it comes to politics, because people are so opinionated.
Mm-hmm. And sensitive. People are really sensitive.
Yeah, we're in this age of being triggered and
everything, every little thing.
Yeah, and along with that goes cancel culture, and do you want to explain what cancel culture is?
Cancel culture is cancer culture.
Yeah, so the title of the show sort of says it all, because if we live by those standards, what happens to free speech?
It's not there anymore. People are so scared now, and they can't say what they're thinking. They can't even listen to other people thinking a certain way, because they're all of a sudden grouped. There goes my computer.
Yeah, so if we can't appreciate, my grandmother used to say to me, to understand your position, you have to appreciate and understand the opposition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what she meant by that was you may not agree with your neighbor, but you have to respect them. And that's the idea of America. America's I don't need to say this. America's a melting pot of all different cultures and diversities. And the beautiful thing about that is we can still speak our minds and we can still say what we feel without the persecution of our peers.
And we should be able to do that. We should be able to sit and listen to someone else who doesn't have the viewpoints that we have. And they don't agree with what we're saying. We don't agree with what they're saying, but we should be able to sit and listen with the mind to understand, not just the mind to respond or the mind to give feedback or the mind to argue, but just to understand their viewpoint and where they're coming from.
Right, and at least respect it.
Yeah. Everyone should be respected. Everyone should be respected.
Yeah, I think that's important. So, anyway, just, shout out to Christy for coming on the show and doing your thing. We really appreciate it. That was a long podcast. It was just shy of 2 hours. We normally stay right around the 1 hour mark, but we wanted to make sure we hit all the topics. We had planned that podcast out for a while, and we were not concerned, but we were pretty sure that there was going to be some
we knew there was going to be some, because we're in a really liberal area. Philadelphia is very liberal,
absolutely,
and very on the left side. So, and it was different. She not only was representing LGBTQ, she was also representing conservatives and Christians. So it was very controversial, which is what we like. We like seeing people that aren't the norm, people who think outside the box. That's what we're trying to promote. We're trying to promote that for everyone. Right,
and then also on that episode, we put an age restriction on there just during the live feed, which I think might have reduced some of the viewership because you have to log in to your Google account to view it. And we had to do that because we have to protect ourselves as well. I mean, just affiliating yourself with someone who may have been banned from another platform could also come back to us.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether it's coming from our mouth or not, because we're representing them by allowing them to broadcast on our show.
Yeah. Also, we didn't want Christy to feel like we were restricting her from expressing herself any way that she wanted.
Right.
So we wanted to make sure the live broadcast was only for adults. And then if there was some material that was, adult, then we could keep it that way. But if it wasn't, then we'd
parental advisory, explicit lyrics.
But after the live show, then it's open for everyone as long as everything's clean.
Yeah, so the show right now, you can just click on it and view it. So, I mean, we're really promoting this show, but we would like everyone who watches Human Collective to watch that one because it's a good one.
Yeah, it's good. And give us your feedback. Like, we've been getting some feedback, and it's really good. Some points that Christy made, people were confused about. Some places that she talked about, they didn't understand. We did get some comments about people saying that there's other issues in the LGBT community, not just drugs.
Right.
So that was a good point. Things like that, we'd love to hear. We'd love to hear feedback.
One of the things on that episode that left me curious was when she said that after trying methamphetamine for the first time, and this is from her, almost verbatim what she said, that ignited her curiosity for same-sex relations. Basically, almost saying like the drugs turned her gay, which stirred a conversation I had with another friend of mine, and we just started talking and snowballing ideas, and I was like, if that's true, maybe that's the government's way of controlling the population. Because gay people can't have babies. It takes a male and a man and a woman to make a baby, right? I mean, that's obvious. So I don't know if that's true, but it's definitely food for thought, something to think about. I'm not saying that's the case, but there's this debate, and we talked about this a little bit on the episode, whether being gay or lesbian or whatever is something that you're born with and not something that you're learned. And I'm not saying that's some kind of disorder. That's just your preference. But the question is, and we'd love our viewers watching this show to maybe chime in on the chat. We'd be happy to talk about that. But whether or not it's something that you're born with or it's something that you inherit from your experience above ground.
Yeah, it might be different from each person. So we'd like to hear that.
Yeah. I think everybody goes, well, I don't know. I can only speak for myself. But you go through a period in your life during adolescence like sort of through puberty where you question your sexuality and maybe explore some different things just to make sure that, you know,
You like what you like.
you like what you like. I know what I like, and she's sitting right next to me.
Yeah, I don't know about that though. Like I didn't go through.
What do you mean? You don't know about what?
I didn't go through that. Like where I was
Oh, no?
questioning. No.
You were sure you always were attracted to boys.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
I never had anything like, oh, maybe I'm. No, didn't.
I find that
You
hard to believe.
You don't
because,
believe that about women, though.
well, women are so beautiful and just like soft and just that femininity just like oozes out of you. It's like, how can you not be attracted to that?
But then you're saying that there was a time when you questioned if you were attracted to boys.
Yeah, as a little kid, as
Yeah.
as a young kid. Yeah.
So you thought, hey, maybe I'm attracted to them. I'm gonna test this out.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll
Let's
be
talk
honest
about
about
that.
that. I had a friend when I was really young, maybe like 6 or 7 years old, and I like fooled around with him. And honestly, it made me feel really uncomfortable. And I still did it because I was curious.
Was
but
he as curious as you were?
Yeah.
So you guys were just like curious about each other and discovering your bodies?
Yeah. And I did that with girls too. It was kind of like I didn't have a specific preference. I just maybe because I come from a house where everything was okay and accepted. So it was never like this is what you should like and this is what you should do. So I kind of curiously like fooled around with boys and girls when I was really young.
Was it like a sexual thing? Like were you
Yeah.
sexually attracted or were you just curious?
Just curious.
Okay.
Yeah, and I realized that I didn't like it. It made me feel kind of weird and like not grossed out, but just it wasn't for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember telling my mom and my dad about it and them just kind of like not knowing how to react. They didn't know what
God's
to say.
parents for you.
They were just like, yeah, you probably shouldn't do that. You know, just first of all, you're too young to be fooling around with
Wait.
anybody.
How old were you?
I was probably 6 or 7 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
so
wasn't really. You were just curious.
yeah.
It wasn't sexual.
It was sexual. Yeah, it was sexual. I'm not going to get into all the little details of what I did as a little kid, but it was curiosity. So that's what that was. I remember on the last podcast we were talking about Milo Yiannopoulos, who is a gay British man, and he was, you know, he was not a social justice warrior, but he was more of a conservative. But you know, he became really big. I think he was Breitbart. He was affiliated with that news organization, and he talked about a sexual experience that he had with with a man when he was just a young boy. An underage boy. It might have been a priest. I don't know. I don't want to spit fake news here, but something along those lines. It was a much older man, and
where did he talk about this at?
This was on Joe Rogan's podcast, the Joe Rogan Experience.
Okay. So he's in front of millions of eyes.
Yeah, I mean that's
everyone's watching him say this.
Absolutely. Shout out to Joe Rogan because he was a huge inspiration for myself just wanting to get into podcasting, and you know, his platform is quite diverse as well. I think he doesn't really take sides. He might be a little bit more opinionated than us because we have a different format, but
he can't get canceled either.
No, he can't get canceled.
Too big for the cancel culture.
But that episode with Milo led to him being basically canceled.
Milo being canceled?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yeah. He was fired from Breitbart, and now he's just kind of dissolved into the ether. I use that expression a lot.
I think that's really sad because he was just explaining his story.
Yeah, it
wasn't like he was saying someone's wrong. He wasn't preaching hate. He was just like, this is what happened to me, and I didn't mind it, or I liked it, or whatever.
Yeah, it was just a story, something that happened to him in his life, and whatever. The public responded to it with ill will, and now he gone. He gone.
I think the cancel culture is really becoming dangerous. It's dangerous because you're cutting off people's way to express themselves, but also you're closing your ears to what people who think differently than you might be thinking. And that's
dangerous.
That is dangerous. It's dangerous not to be open, not to understand.
Right.
It's kind of like locking yourself off. You're not really canceling them, but you're really canceling yourself.
And that's just adding to the self-segregation that we see going on in the United States right now. I think the UK has it way better because if you look at just England, we were talking about this earlier. If you look at England, regardless of your race, color, or creed, if you're English, you're English.
Yeah.
And people are proud to say that.
And not many people are proud to be American. Not anymore.
Especially in the millennial group, I find that the patriotic pride has shrunk a lot, you know, and that's really unfortunate because we're in this wonderful generation of the internet and social media where everything is right at your fingertips and you can literally connect with someone on the other side of the planet instantaneously. And that's a beautiful thing. So why close yourself off? Why not be open-minded? Why not explore those things that stir your curiosity? And maybe not just curiosity, but maybe the things that you're disgusted by or whatever, but that was only because of a predisposition.
Yeah, just listen with an open mind. That's what we're asking everyone, our viewers, our listeners. You know, hear and listen with an open mind. And we're not telling you, we're not trying to change your opinion on anything. We're just giving a platform for people who don't think like the norm. And
yeah,
it's really important. So there's a lot of like pride, cultural pride things and LGBT community pride things.
Yeah.
I was thinking that maybe this pride stuff is actually segregating.
How do you mean that? You mean that?
Like you said, our culture is like, not our culture, our generation is not proud of being American. I think it's because we're already grouped into like Asian American and African American
and not just American.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but you know what? That's interesting because America is
a melting pot.
It's a land of immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing immigrants do, and I grew up in a very diverse neighborhood where I'd say a majority of the people on my street were immigrants from somewhere else. I mean, my family, you know, not me personally, but my grandparents were immigrants. And people hold on to that pride of where they're from. Mm-hmm. But there's also a reason they're here.
Yeah.
You know, everyone came here to live the American dream, live a better life. Maybe they come from a war-torn nation, or you know, their religion was causing them, you know, problems, or whatever it is. We all came here for a reason, so why not hold on to those things and just all be Americans? But then again, I still think it's kind of cool to hold on to pieces of your
definitely.
culture.
Like, I'm not saying that you shouldn't. Like, people should know where they're from and know their culture and celebrate their culture. I definitely agree with that. But I think it's everywhere where we're like segregated. On every form, it's like, who are you? And your background, your culture shouldn't change how you're being interacted with in society. I don't think that should change.
One group of people I feel like right now are being slaughtered is white men.
Oh. Yeah, he's complaining about this.
Well, no, I'm not complaining. But I happen to, and by no choice of my own, I've been slotted into this group of people that it's kind of okay to hate on.
Yeah, because you guys get everything. You're privileged.
What do I have? And it's like, I get it. I appreciate that. I can understand that. And I can sympathize with minorities and less fortunate cultures. But it's like, what can I do? I can't change who I am. You know, I just am who I am. So
no one's blaming you.
Yeah, and I think it's just a matter of just realizing that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And no one's blaming you. It's just, I think you're very aware of other people and every culture. And I think that's because of the way you grew up.
Right.
But there's a lot of white males that aren't. And they're oblivious to it.
And
I think that's what people are calling out.
Right. So the white privilege thing. But the white privilege thing applies more to white men, I think, than it does white women. Because women have been persecuted in history in America, you know, with the ability to vote and how sort of men are the head of the household. And the past 20, 30 years, things have changed dramatically. You have women running corporate America. You know, you have women.
Amazing.
It is amazing. It's a beautiful thing. You have women running the household. You have women head of household. And then you look at religion, for example. Christianity always puts the man at the head of the household, correct?
Yeah.
So what's the shift there? Is there a shift there? If you're a Christian and your wife is the breadwinner, does that make you a bad Christian?
No, I think you can still be the head of the home without being the breadwinner. Like, I don't think money or Well, I don't know.
Well, for example,
I
what if
don't
you're
think that money should empower or
Yeah.
change people.
no, not just money, but let's say you're a stay-at-home dad.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so the wife's out.
You
She's
lose respect. Is that where you're going with this?
what's that?
You'd lose respect?
No, not at all. I'm just asking. I wonder how that affects, sort of religious law, if you will.
I don't think that affects religious law. I don't think.
Okay.
I
Fair enough.
don't know.
How do you think?
I'm sure someone who studies religious law would know better than I would, but
Here's
I
a
don't think that
hypothetical.
affects it.
Here's a hypothetical. So you've got a group of men, all alpha males,
Mm-hmm.
and then they meet Matt. and Matt's
What's Matt gonna do? Start a podcast?
Matt's a stay-at-home dad, and he takes good care of his kids. He dresses them, takes them to school every day,
Mm-hmm.
and he cooks dinner. He does the laundry. He cleans the house. All the things that previously may have been deemed as a woman's job.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, is it a stretch to say that?
No,
That sort of was the
it
norm,
was.
especially in America, in this country, that was the
In
culture.
most countries.
In most countries.
That's the normal, and it still is. It
Some
was and
countries,
still
it's
is.
against the law to do anything different.
Yeah. So what's going on with Matt?
So my question is, that group of alpha males, in your opinion, do they view Matt differently because of the choices that he
They
made?
probably will. I mean, I'm not an alpha male, but they probably will. They'll
Yeah.
probably think that he's a pushover, or he's not a real man, or he's a beta.
Right. Beta. Shout out Jesse Lee Peterson. Yeah, I find that kind of curious because the culture's changing,
Yeah. It's so different. There's no like mother, father, or children. Like that whole norm isn't a norm. There's no such thing as the norm anymore.
Yeah.
It's whatever works for you and your family.
Yeah, I just remember my parents' generation saying, you guys are responsible for the future. It's in our hands to make the future what it will be. And it's like, it almost seems like we're so confused
Our
of what to
generation,
do with this. It's like we've been given a hot potato.
just
and
passing it along.
We're just passing it around because it's too hot.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're the ones that gave us the hot potato.
You know what we should do? We should make mashed potatoes out of that because they're delicious.
Mm.
I'm hungry. Anyway, so I don't know. It's just an interesting point. We are responsible for the future. We're living in the now, but the choices that we make and the cultural divides are literally going to set the tone for our children. And this is me reaching out to millennials, people in my generation, people between the ages of like 18 and 40. Like, we have a responsibility to do the right thing here.
Yeah, we do.
So all this cancel culture shit and being triggered by the most minute little thing and slandering someone like Ellen DeGeneres because she sits next to
yeah.
George Bush
That
at a
happened.
football game. Yeah, that actually happened.
And then Reese Witherspoon, I think she tweeted like how she respects Ellen DeGeneres for her stance on that, and she got canceled.
Unreal. I mean, just
Like, she had to actually take the tweet down just because she offered her support. I think it's ridiculous. It's becoming too much.
it kind of reminds me of our last podcast with the hat, with the MAGA hat, and how triggered people are from, and it's become an idol. I
Mhm.
guess the hat, because of what it represents. But what does Ellen sitting next to George Bush at a football game, what does that actually mean? Does that mean that she supports George Bush?
Well, it was a Cowboys game, so
Oh, cowgirls?
I can understand why they can. No, I'm joking, but yeah, it's ridiculous. And I know we're not too scared of the cancel culture, but there's other podcasts. One I want to shout her out, but
Oh yeah,
my
are we?
computer died.
Can we? Do you remember her name? We'll talk about what her. We'll keep you anonymous if you're tuning in right now. Just
She said I could shout her out. No, I can't because my computer's
okay.
died.
Well, maybe
But
she's in the chat.
she said something that was really interesting. She said how we can cherry pick who we're canceling. Meanwhile, like, and I'm paraphrasing probably terribly.
Yeah.
Well, they're the actual like bullies and the people who are really abusers. And I think that's what people are becoming. They're almost like trolls, just shutting people up and canceling them.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is the parties have almost flipped.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I know I'm not involved in any kind of activism when it comes to politics, but I've seen the liberals perform acts of violence against the conservatives
Yeah.
just for what they think. And
It's
that
awful.
and think of what does that do? What is that doing to the culture?
It's doing nothing. It's just making people ashamed to think differently.
You know, I hear people say
scared.
if the Trump supporters were quiet about their support for Donald Trump, well, if they were outspoken about it, they might get beat up in a
Yeah.
crowd.
I had a friend in Philly, and
Yeah,
he told me, yeah, I voted for Trump, but I would never tell anyone besides you, Polly.
because he was in fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was scared. He said he had some points that I believed in. I wanted the country to be ran like a business. Like I supported him in certain things. So yeah, I voted for him, but I've never told anyone that, and I can't. Like he was scared that his tires would get slashed or his car windows would get
You want to drop his
busted.
name?
Yeah. But I'm protecting you.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's sad. That's sad. You can't even say, like, you can't even discuss issues. You can't say, oh, he made sense
Right.
on this,
How-
or
how
someone
do
else
you-
made sense on that.
Yeah. How do you
It's
discuss
stupid.
issues if you're living in fear of what you believe in?
Mm-hmm. Or who you are. A lot of people are still living in the closet because they can't come out for something.
Maybe this is all part of a government agenda, because if we shut up and don't say what we actually believe, we slide very slowly into communism.
Yeah, we become sheep.
We slid very slowly into socialism.
Are we here? Are we in socialism right now?
Absolutely. No, I think we were more of a socialist nation under the Democrats when Obama was in office.
Mhm.
I think they were really they had a very specific agenda for bigger government. And it's almost like we can't manage our own lives, so we need to put it in the hands of the government.
And that's scary because, I mean, I think people should be able to control their own lives. There's certain things.
I think it's bizarre for bigger government and to put our hands in theirs. You
Our
know?
lives in their hands.
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
Well, we'll see how it goes. Right now, we've got a maniac in office. Whether you agree with him or not, you have to admit he is a bit of a blowhard.
He's extreme.
You're covering your mouth. You're like, you don't want to say.
Where's my thing?
You don't want to get that cancel culture bug. That's hilarious. Man, that bit, I was really hoping that bit would have worked out better. I completely forgot.
I told you. I was like, standing up there. I was like, are we going to put the tape on? Yeah. Are we
Yeah.
going to put the tape on? Yeah.
We had some technical difficulties on the show. So anyway, a couple things I wanted to talk about. One, actually leading to just the way the media manipulates what people say. Everyone knows Cardi B,
Yeah.
right? Shout out to Cardi B. So Cardi B was doing an interview, and she was asked about how she manages her time with her daughter. And she had brought up that, she has a babysitter or nanny, whatever you want to call it. And some sideways comment about how her daughter calls the nanny mommy.
But she didn't say that.
She didn't say that
What
in those
she's-
words. It was manipulated. I don't remember
What
exactly what she said, but
I
it was.
remember what she said.
You do?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, this is after the rat where she was protecting herself. She was saying that she spends more time at home than in the studio because she doesn't want her kid calling somebody else mommy.
Okay. Actually, I have the clip. We can play the clip for the audience, and they can actually formulate their own opinion. This is from Hot 97, so hopefully this doesn't get us banned, but I'm going to play it. Here it goes.
Everybody wanna be suing people? I'ma spit at y'all motherfuckers like this. Like that, nigga. The fuck? Don't play when everybody wanna be suing people? I'ma spit at y'all motherfuckers like this. Like that, nigga. The fuck? Don't play when it comes to my kid. Don't use my kid for clickbait. Don't fucking cut half of the shit that I said about why do I gotta spend time with my child. Cause every single day, like just yesterday, these bitch ass niggas, Joe Budden and the motherfucking podcast talking about, oh, Cardi's doing other things. She's not busy worrying about hip hop because she's doing other money moves. Yes, nigga, I'm doing other money moves. And guess what else I'm doing, nigga? I gotta spend time with my child. So I'm sorry that I'm not doing what y'all niggas expect me to do, cause I gotta do other shit, like spend time with my kid. The fuck? And the younger niggas is gonna use what.
All right, we'll end it there.
She's ranting.
You think she was upset?
Just a little bit. She seemed a little upset.
Jeez.
But I totally understand that. Especially like she's a mom. She's a professional. She's doing a lot. She has a lot on her plate, and then people are accusing her of being a bad mother. I mean, I'd be mad too.
It's a tough gig. I mean, being an entertainer, being someone in the entertainment business, like you're working around the clock. You know, you can say what you want about the kind of money entertainers make, but she earns every dollar that she's made.
I think it's wrong for people to also like tell other women how to be mothers, you know, like, or saying they're not being a good mother because they're working too much or working too little. I mean, I don't know. I think that's really wrong. So for them to say her kid is calling someone else mother and switching the words and cutting up her video.
Yeah.
She has every right to be upset. I don't know if she's getting her message across the right way.
With the way that she said it. Yeah, I think
she has
that
every
was
right to be mad.
It was kind of like heat of the moment. I mean, she really went hard. But Cardi B's always been like that. I mean, if you watch any of her social media, anytime she has a beef with somebody, she lets them have it. She is in the most beautiful way expressing her freedom of speech to the maximum. And I appreciate that a lot. I think more people need to be like that. People keep their mouths shut, you know,
because they're scared.
Because they're
scared. It's cancel culture. They're scared.
Yeah, but the squeaky wheel gets greased.
Not always. Squeaky wheel might get canceled.
Or get you fired.
Yeah, you might lose everything because sometimes that's all you have is a platform.
Yeah, but you don't lose your integrity.
That's true.
That's important.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, but integrity doesn't put food on the table.
No, it does not. Welfare does. Not really. So, and speaking of another woman of female empowerment, Jane Fonda, the two-time Oscar winner, who's now in her 80s, I think she's 81 years old, was arrested. She was protesting global warming.
What was she arrested for?
I guess with the way she was doing it, I don't know. The article was kind of vague. I probably should have looked that up a little deeper, but she was with other protesters, and it might have been some public area, or she was on private property or something like that.
She was like blocking a public building.
Oh, okay. Why didn't you say that?
Well, that's what I heard. I don't know if it's true, but yeah, I heard she was blocking it. I mean, and she was protesting climate change. She was very supportive of Greta Thunberg.
Oh,
right?
yeah, the girl, the Nordic girl.
Yeah.
There was so many memes about that girl, like, because
they're coming for her hard.
Yeah.
Sad.
Well, listen, she's kind of scary looking. A little bit.
I don't think people should worry about her looks. They should worry about her message. But on like defense for Jane Fonda, she's always been very like active socially. I think she's also like went over during the Vietnam War, and she was like trying to stop people from bombing, the pilots from bombing in Vietnam. Like she's a very social aware person. So, I mean, in her defense, what are you pulling
Look
up?
at that face.
Leave her alone. She's like 16.
Is she? I thought she was younger than that.
Yeah, she looks pretty young. But yeah, I think that she was blocking some building. I think that's all for publicity. Arresting her. What do you think?
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. So she didn't stay locked up. Like it was a couple seconds and they let her go. But yeah, it was because she was blocking something. But she's very supportive of it, of protesting climate change, and I think that's a good thing. I think more people should get behind Greta.
Yeah.
And not make fun of her.
I'm
saying she looks weird. I think she's autistic, right?
I don't know.
She's on the spectrum.
Is she?
Yeah.
I think I just lost our feed.
Cool.
Here, keep the show going for a second. I gotta check on something.
My computer's dead, so I don't even know what the next topic is. Can you give it to me?
Yeah, I can. Oh, so we talked about Jane Fonda. Also in Portland, Oregon, at the Portland building, they are banning urinal stalls because they are too gender specific.
So now there's only toilets?
Yeah, they're only having toilets because they're not specific to a man or a woman.
Do you think that's to save money? Will that save money?
Yeah.
They have to build like...
I just lost our feed. Okay, we're good. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure our feed was still hot. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Back in.
Welcome back. So they only have toilets. Don't they have to build more toilets then?
Well, I mean,
Probably wasting money.
yeah.
I would
Well,
think.
I don't know what's more expensive, a urinal. It's only in the men's bathroom, obviously, because women don't use urinals.
Yeah, but if they take out urinals, wouldn't they have to put in more toilets? Because the guys that would be using that while the other guys are using the toilets, they can't,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, you're right.
So wouldn't that cost more money? Isn't it about money?
It's always about money.
I don't see why. They're probably just taking it out and not putting anything more in.
Yeah. What do you think about the gender neutral bathrooms?
Like when you go in and I don't know, it's a little uncomfortable.
Like, well, just
I have not been in one. Have you been in one?
no. Yeah, I have. It was like at some trendy sort of bar restaurant in New York City, and there was no walls. It was clear glass.
Wait. So in the
Yeah.
stalls,
Yeah,
there was glass in the stalls and everyone could see you on the toilet?
correct.
Oh no.
Yeah.
That's one way they get people not to use the bathroom.
It's kind of weird.
Like
isn't
I would
it?
just hold it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind of
so
weird.
I went to this restaurant in Center City somewhere. I don't
Right.
remember. But the ladies' bath, there's a ladies' bathroom and a men's bathroom. And in the ladies' bathroom, you know where you're like washing your hands?
Yeah.
That was a two-way mirror.
Oh.
So people outside could see you inside washing your hands. That freaked me out. Because that's like, I mean, I'm a woman. I'm a girl. We go into the bathroom. We like to like primp. And what if our date's outside staring at us doing that? Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I hated it. I hated that restaurant. I'm not going to say what restaurant it is, but
Well, it's only going to get weirder.
yeah. So can you imagine like a guy being right there? I think they're just trying to make it fast. You go in and use the bathroom and get out. No socializing, no primping, no putting on makeup. Just get in and get out if you have to.
Yeah. So, well, okay. So here's a hypothetical. You have a transgender person who was a man and is now a woman, and they use the women's bathroom.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Would that bother you at all? I mean, if
No.
if you knew,
No, that wouldn't bother me.
no, because you would look at that
As a
trans
woman.
person as a woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, respectfully.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that wouldn't bother me.
There's
It
definitely
would be men that would bother me.
yeah. There's definitely well, what do you mean? Because they technically were born a man.
Yeah, but they're not anymore. Like,
See-
I mean, they're women. Their
Right.
minds are women. They're
But what if it was like just a perverted? I guess you can't stop that. I mean, I guess the argument is
if it's a perverted man going
yeah.
in pretending.
you can't stop that anyway.
Yeah,
You know, who would know?
Yeah, and there's perverted people everywhere. I mean, what's to stop a man from just walking in? The bathrooms aren't like locked and only coded for women, so
Yeah, I've accidentally stumbled into the women's bathroom.
accidentally.
And the feeling is like you really feel like you are just stepped foot in the wrong country. You're like, wait a minute.
that's our sacred place.
Yeah.
Like that's where we go talk about you guys.
One thing I will note about women's bathrooms that a lot of men probably don't know is they're filthy dirty. Women are
You guys didn't know that?
No, women are so much dirtier than men when it comes to public bathrooms.
Well, and sometimes regular bathrooms too. You'd be surprised.
What the hell you do when
Not
you walk
me.
in there? It's like a bomb went off.
Well, that's where you do everything. That's what I'm telling you. Like the bathroom's a sacred place. You do everything there. Anything that you would do outside, you can do in your bathroom. I know women that go and like eat dinner in their bathroom.
Men, it's like a regimen. We go in, we do the one or two, we wash our hands, maybe, and then we're out of there.
Maybe.
There's two kinds of men in the world. There's men who wash their hands before they pee, and men who wash their hands after.
Which one are you?
Oh, wouldn't you like to know? No, I won't be disclosing that. So, all right. So let's kind of shift into something a little bit pop culture-y. We saw the Joker film
Yeah.
yesterday. And we're clout chasing right now because it's a trending topic. So if we talk a little bit about the Joker, hey, but you know what? I think there is some correlation there in that film with what's kind of been going on with our show over the past couple episodes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what was his name in the film? Fink? Arthur Fink? Is that right?
I
Fink?
don't remember the last name.
So he's sort of a socially inept person.
Mm-hmm.
And is an outcast.
And he suffers from mental illness.
He's almost a picturesque version of how the media portrays these mass shooters, you know? Mental health issues, not a normal contributing member of society. I'm doing the quote fingers on that. And someone who sort of goes off on the deep end. He gets his hands on a gun.
That he wasn't supposed to have.
Right, through like the black market or whatever. And then
his friend planted it on him, literally.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a spoiler alert.
Yeah, it's movie's been out for a while, so
yeah. So
if you haven't seen it, it's on you.
Right. So he's on the train. And this was actually in like the trailers. They showed like a piece of this scene, but he gets bullied, he gets beat up, and then he pulls out the gun and he kills the guys. One, I think it was in self-defense, the first guy, but then the third guy, he kind of chases him down. He's wounded. And then he shoots him in the back. And that was definitely a cold-blooded thing. And I think that was showing the difference between
defense and then when he became like a murderer. Right.
And that sort of let you in a little bit onto his psyche, which was devilish. You know, everyone knows. I mean, if anyone's seen, any of the Batman films, you know that Joker is quite a bad guy. Oh, by the way, really quick, do you think, in your opinion, Joaquin Phoenix or Heath Ledger, who did a better job as Joker?
Well, that's a tough question. I think they both did their Joker really well. Who was the guy in the middle? Wasn't there a guy between those two? The one who did the
Jack Nicholson also played the Joker.
Yeah, but I heard there's like 3 different Jokers, like 3 different eras of Jokers.
Yeah.
And they had different eras. One was more like had a mental illness. One was more like a villain. So I think there's like, and one was more humorous.
Jack Nicholson's version of the Joker was very comical.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because you never would think, but Jack Nicholson, well, no, he's a funny guy. He's done some films where, he had like sort of comedic things, but he really was a Joker.
So who was the one in Suicide Squad?
Oh yeah, that's right. That was Jared Leto.
Yeah, they didn't give him much airtime in that movie.
I don't think. Yeah,
he couldn't even develop his character. I don't.
No, yeah, and that was sort of like he was almost like a gangbanger version. Yeah. He was like all tatted up, and he had the gold teeth and the gold. Showing
like
that
a mafia lord almost.
Yeah. It was an odd rendition of the Joker for sure.
This is a take on it, maybe.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe our comic book fans can chime in and let us know if the Suicide Story that was more fitting of the Joker role. I don't know.
Yeah, but I really like this new one because it let us look into mental illness. He was as the character as the Joker, he was required to keep a journal, and he'd write down his feelings, and he would also write down jokes. And one of the things he wrote down in his journal that I found was really interesting. He said that the worst thing about having a mental illness is having to pretend that you don't. And I think that's amazing because that's what we require from people who have a mental illness. We're expecting them to ignore it and act like it doesn't exist. And
do you think society creates these mental illnesses? Because a lot of them are sociological. Like they're all linked to feeling like you're not part of a group or do you know what I mean? Like if a person with these quote social disorders existed in the wild and they were just a hunter and gatherer, I don't think it would matter.
I think society requires people to be part of society.
Normal. Yeah, fit into that normal. Yeah.
If they don't contribute, then they're outcasts.
Then you're deemed abnormal. And then you end up on psychotropic drugs, benzodiazepines, all this stuff to sort of control and subterfuge those issues. Because that's really all it does is, by subterfuge, I mean it just kind of pushes it down and out from the surface. But really those underlying issues are still there. And in the film, his character was on a number of drugs.
Yeah, they said he was on
7?
Yeah,
I think
he said 7. And the worst thing is that the program, he was going to go see a therapist, and the therapist never listened to him.
Yeah.
Like, she was just a body. She'd ask him the same questions. And he's like, you don't listen.
Yeah.
And I think that's like back what we were talking in the beginning of the show. We're talking about active listening.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the person whose job requires it. Like, you need to be able to listen and try to understand people. But she was a social worker. I think, I don't even know if she was a therapist in the movie. And she was just asking the same questions. And was just like, okay, we're going to be cutting your funds. You're not going to get your medication. And it's sad, but I think that's also like what happens in society in general.
Yeah, and then they cut the funding to the program, and then he was just out in the cold.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like, oh, the funding's been cut, so I guess you're normal again.
Yeah, and he asked, well, where am I supposed to get my meds?
My
and she's
medication.
like, oh, I'm sorry. I don't know if that happens. I hope that doesn't. I think people can get them if they need them. That was Gotham.
That was Gotham, which
This is America.
basically
Hopefully
New York.
It's not bad.
But you'd be surprised how screwed up the system is.
Yeah.
Speaking from personal experience, I've been through the system. I've been on welfare myself personally at one point in my life when things were really bad. And I grew up on welfare. I come from very humble beginnings. You know, my family didn't have much money. I hope I'm not putting my family on blast here, but, you know, my father couldn't read. You know, he only went to grade school. My mother never completed high school. They're good people, but, you know, they were just, they were a product of their environment. And we lived on welfare, and it was tough. You know, nothing's harder than trying to melt some government cheese. That shit don't melt. Try making a grilled cheese sandwich with some government cheese. It's like it turns to powder. It's weird. I don't think it's cheese.
I don't know what government cheese is.
Government cheese is like a...
Cheese.
Well, at the beginning of the month, it's only American cheese.
Okay.
Because we're in America. And they basically give you a 5-pound brick of cheese until you have a good day.
Oh, really? They're giving groceries. I thought they gave food stamps. I know so little about this. I thought they gave food stamps. They actually give cheese.
Yeah, they do give you food stamps, but if you wait in line down at the government office, I think it's like once a month or something like that, they give you some stuff. They give you a loaf of bread and government cheese. Yeah, that government cheese. And it doesn't taste too bad. Like, it tastes like cheese until you try and melt it. And then you realize this is not cheese. I think that's why I turned out the way I did. People were like, man, you're so tall. How did you get so tall? I don't know, probably because I grew up eating radioactive government cheese.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So anyway, so in the movie, they cut the funding to this program he's on, seeing a public psychologist or whatever. And then he sort of goes off on the deep end. He just goes ape shit.
Yeah. And there's a lot of the movie that you don't know if it's actually really happening or it's in his head.
Yeah.
I think that was a really interesting take.
That
I like
was
that.
cool. Yeah.
And even towards the end, you're like wondering, is this real? Is he in the mental hospital or is he on the street on the cop car? Like, you can't really tell.
Yeah.
And I like that because to him, they're both real.
Right.
Which is amazing. I really like that. I also like doing one part of the movie. He was at the talk show, and he said something about humor being subjective.
Yes. What's funny?
Yeah.
So
and who deems what's funny?
Yeah. So there's a scene where he's in, and we're really spoiling this movie for you guys who haven't seen it. We're sorry.
It's been out for a while.
Yeah.
Go see it.
So there's a scene where he does like an open mic night, and shout out to Chris Nee, by the way, if you're tuning in.
Oh yeah.
Stand-up comedian Chris Nee.
Chris. We miss you.
Chris, really quick before I get into the Joker thing, Chris Nee has a event coming up. Do you have the thing for the event? So
for a while.
Yeah, so anyone who didn't tune into that episode, Chris has a foundation. He suffered from leukemia when he was a kid, and he has a foundation where he raises money and awareness for leukemia. The date is Saturday, November 9th. Doors open at 6:15 p.m. Chris, if you're watching this, Polly and I are going to do our best to show up to this event. The location is at St. Bernadette School in O'Brien Hall in Philadelphia, Drexel Hill, Philly. $30 a person at the door. 50-50 bingo, Dubers? I don't know what that is. Refreshments available for purchase. It's a BYOB. They have prizes for both men and women. They'll have designer bags, sports memorabilia, outdoor apparel, etc., etc. So that's a really good cause. And, you know, Chris was kind enough to come on the show and be a funny man. So the least we can do is try and help push his foundation. What was it?
It's a good cause.
What was it called? It was Healing Hats and Toys is the name of the foundation. Spreading hope one child at a time. So
it's for children who are battling cancer.
Yeah, so shout out to Chris again for such a noble cause. So, okay, back to the Joker.
Yeah, he was a comedian. Well, he was trying to be a comedian.
He was a comedian. He was doing a open mic night, testing out his stand-up, and he bombed.
Yeah, but we didn't know he bombed
Yeah,
until...
because there was sort of this I guess, vision that he had in his head that he was doing a good job. Or he
Yeah.
recovered from bombing to sort of recovering the crowd, which is in comedy is so
amazing.
yeah, it's almost impossible to do that. So, and as the viewer watching the movie, you're not really sure because he kind of has this visionary girlfriend as well, who's a neighbor that he terrorizes, and you got to see the movie to find the rest out. But
Stalks her.
so
Kinda
then,
creepy.
yeah, so somehow, and this film takes place in like the 70s, 80s.
Yeah, it seems like that. I
Yes.
didn't even think about that, but yeah, it's probably like in the 80s or something.
Yeah, so somehow they got footage. The played by Robert De Niro plays the late night talk show host, and they found the footage of him bombing, and he was dressed in his clown attire. So
No, he was in regular attire then.
was it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay, you're right. I'm sorry. So he shows up to the late night talk show in his clown suit, and the way De Niro told the story of him bombing now creates a reaction of the audience where they laugh, so it becomes funny, and that lends itself to what you just said, that comedy is subjective, and depending on the delivery, who's delivering it, and how they deliver it, can make people laugh or not.
Yeah.
But his intention, Joaquin Phoenix, the character, was for people to laugh with him,
Not at him.
not at him. So what happened during the late night show was they laughed at him. And you could see in his face the rage that was like just
Yeah.
this burning fire in his chest.
It's almost like a disgust. Like he was disgusted at how terrible these people were.
Yeah.
Because he didn't do anything to hurt them. He was literally just standing up there. And I think a lot of comics are brave just to stand up and try to make people laugh.
Yeah.
Like they're up there doing a good thing. They're trying to
Right.
bring joy to people. And people were just laughing at him because of a couple words that Robert De Niro was saying. I don't know his character's
Yeah.
name. But
And De Niro, he was just sort of so jaded from the role
Yeah.
that he's in as a talk show host. He wasn't even thinking about it. He's thinking, this is a little bit. This is a little segment. But for Arthur, it was his
whole
entire
life.
world.
Yeah, he daydreamed about being on that show.
Yeah. So then what happens?
So then he said, what did he say? What do you get when you cross someone that society has turned away or something? Don't get me quoting things, people. I can't remember anything. But basically, he kills everyone.
He blows De Niro's brains out.
Oh, yeah, just Robert De Niro.
Yeah, he shoots him in the head right on live television.
After he admits to killing the people on the subway.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So there was like this whole movement. So, the media puts out a newspaper that a clown killed 3 Wall Street guys who were like total jerk offs, and, sort of like the public gets behind them. And they have these clown faces and stuff like that.
Because there's a huge separate between the poor and the rich. And I think that's still something that's happening in our society today.
The
Like, there's-
caste system. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge divide. There's like poverty and then the rich. And the middle class is getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
The middle class you can almost put in
It's
with
poverty.
the poor.
Yeah.
And you know what else is crazy? Speaking of poverty and sort of the wealth, the distribution of wealth, is there's a lot more millionaires.
Yeah, there's a lot more billionaires. We were watching that show.
Yeah.
There's
And that kind of says to me that maybe our money's not worth as much as we think it is.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Because there's so many billionaires.
Yeah, I mean, you could literally like do what we're doing right now, go viral 6 months down the line after some sponsorship and ads, you're a millionaire.
Yeah.
So what does that mean anymore? What is that worth? And what do you have to give up, and what do you have to sacrifice to be part of that group?
I think some people do it in an honest way.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people that do it also abandon
Their
where they
morals
came
and
from.
their integrity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when you grow up poor, all you have is your integrity. All you have is your character. I remember the people that I grew up with as a kid were funny. They were just naturally funny. And because their character was their entire being. They didn't have a fancy car, a fancy house, or a timeshare, vacation home. They just had themselves,
Yeah.
and
So who they are really mattered.
yeah. So I think that poverty, excuse me, for me growing up in Philadelphia really bred some really amazing human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And that was because of the difficulties of being impoverished, like growing up poor.
So do you think being rich would make someone corrupt?
I think
Or
it
do you
can.
think you can't be corrupt unless, I mean, you can't be rich unless you are corrupt?
Oh, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. It's almost like you have to do something a little dirty to get there. It doesn't just happen.
Do you have to step on some toes? You
Yeah.
gotta crawl over people?
Burn some bridges.
Do you think so? I think there's ways you can get there honestly. There has to be. I mean, for the hope of society, there has to be.
For the hope of society, you're right. But in reality, I don't know.
Yeah. Do you think if you get there, even if you didn't climb on people or stab people in the back and you didn't claw your way to the top, even if you got there honestly once you're there, do you think you become corrupt then?
I think it's easier to become corrupt because now the type of people you'll be associating with when you get into those groups, the people that are just going to approach you
Yeah.
because they know you've got money.
Their morals aren't
They're
increased.
yeah. Then again, we could be wrong. That could be us judging the rich.
Yeah,
I don't know.
poor.
I mean, there's rich people that do a lot of good with their money. For example, my old boss, Michael Rubin, I used to work for Fanatics. And Michael Rubin is a billionaire, self-made billionaire, comes from a pretty middle-class home. You know, Jewish kid, grew up in a middle-class home in Delaware County, like just outside of Philadelphia, and bootstrapped and started a business in his parents' basement, borrowed some money from his neighbors, and got into sports merchandising, licensed apparel and that sort of thing, and built an
Smart.
empire. And then he's the one that helped Meek Mill get off of his case, which
I
in
didn't
turn
know that.
started an entire movement for prison reform and minorities in prison that were wrongfully accused or maybe had a harsher sentence because they were a minority. That goes back to that white privilege thing. Someone like me, maybe I could sit in front of a judge and they'll have more sympathy on me just because of my race. Whereas someone like Meek Mill, who had a tough upbringing and made some bad choices in his life, but got the harshest sentence possible. And that might have been because of his minority.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so Michael Rubin saw, hey, there's a problem here.
And he fixed it.
Well, he's trying to fix it. He's partnering with Jay-Z and some really high-level lawyers and stuff like that to work on prison reform. He got Meek Mill's name cleared.
Yeah.
You know, so
I have to say something. I think a lot of billionaires now are doing something to give back, which I think is excellent. But just because they're doing that doesn't mean that they haven't done terrible things in the past, or
Right.
they're not still doing terrible things, but they have to show a good face because they're scared of the cancel culture or something.
yeah.
So,
And also, just because of their money doesn't mean that they have to. That's another thing. It's
Yeah.
like almost like the less fortunate expect that.
yeah, that actually happened in the Joker movie as well. They were kind of mad because, what was his name? Bruce Wayne's father?
Oh,
Wasn't doing-
Thomas Wayne.
Yeah, wasn't doing anything to help in
Right.
their eyes. And he was the richest man in the city, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean,
There's
do
a
you
lot of
think-
really interesting threads in that movie that
Yeah.
tie into our culture today.
in our society, a lot.
Yeah. Shout out to Todd Phillips who wrote and directed that film.
Yeah,
Really well
excellent job.
done. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of ties in. Do you think they're responsible, people, the billionaires, the top 1%? Do you think they're responsible to helping with climate change or social issues? Do you think they should be required to? They're self-made. They busted their butts to get where
To
they're
get
at.
there, yeah.
Are they responsible for the people who are not as fortunate?
I don't think they're responsible, but they have the power to do it. So why not? Why not help your fellow man if you can?
Yeah. Yeah, I think they should. I mean, it's all for humanity.
It's all for the greater good of humanity.
Yeah.
You know, and also maybe don't, you know, there's nothing wrong with helping other nations, but we need so much work here at home.
We do.
You know, America
so
needs
much.
help. We're in a lot of ways we're bleeding out, you know, so you don't have to look too far to find someone that needs a helping hand.
Mm-hmm. If
You
you,
know.
really want to help, there's so many programs out there.
Yeah.
And you can find something that speaks to you.
Yeah,
know, if you,
absolutely.
like,
There's so many
If you want to work with
organizations.
children or you want to work with the homeless, like there's so many organizations that you can do something, give back. I think if everyone did that, and we didn't just require the 1%, but if everyone did something, the world would be a better place.
Yeah. And you could even start with something like this. Expressing yourself and not trying to influence people, but inform people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really our goal here. That's really what we're trying to do with this podcast. In a very genuine way, it's more than just us, the two people sitting at this table right here. It's really about the viewer.
Yeah.
You know, and as that grows, I feel like we have a responsibility to our viewers to make sure that we stay true and we stay genuine. So, I mean, it would be amazing for this show to grow to something like a Rogan or whoever, Logan Paul, and you know what I mean? Like these guys, their voice is getting to a lot of ears and a lot of eyes. We're not. We might. But I think one thing, a responsibility that we have as that happens is to stay true to what this was from the ground up.
Yes.
You know, when we sat and we talked about doing this podcast and, you know, what our goal was with it, to never really lose sight of that. So this is kind of like my contract to our viewers, signing off saying that as this grows, and it will, because we'll make sure it does, we'll stay true to that.
Mm-hmm.
And not sell out, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. We will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and you know, and just thank you to everyone that has tuned in to this show from the beginning. We have a few viewers that have literally been with us since the very beginning and you know, that's 8 episodes ago. It's not
so long ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
In a lot of ways it does seem like a long time ago.
It's come a long way.
Yeah. I don't know if people realize how much work goes into doing this. Like so many things behind the scenes that you don't think about, all this technical shit.
And it's just us two. It's not
and it's just us
big
two.
production.
Yeah.
Well, it's mostly motion.
Yeah. And my dog Ayla, who's on the couch right now, side-eyeing me like,
She's a
Dad, I gotta pee.
It's a mascot. She offers her moral support.
Yeah. So anyway, we can wrap this up. I think that unless there was anything else you wanted to talk about.
No, I think my laptop died, so.
Okay. Well, so the plan is with Human Collective to bring you at least 2 episodes a week. Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. being our guest episode.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we work really hard to make sure we're bringing intriguing guests to you and good content.
Free thinkers, creators, people who think outside the box to promote active listening.
Absolutely. And then either Friday or Monday, it'll be one or the other. We do sort of a recap like we did tonight, where it's not really a hard-boiled episode. It's a little bit more open format, but we talk about the guest and we do sort of fill you in on what our opinion is on the show and how things played out, because during that episode, we really want to focus on our guest and not really take up too much airtime or try and influence them with our opinion or start a debate or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, that's not the goal here. The goal here is for people who have been silenced by the media or people who don't have the voice or the platform to educate people on whatever their thing is.
Mm-hmm. And express themselves.
Yeah.
And to just like promote free thinking. So if you guys listen to those episodes on Wednesdays and you want to, you know, debate or you want to discuss or you have some input that you want to give us, you can always use these episodes on Friday or Monday to discuss
in the live
and
chat.
we'd love that. We'd love open discussions. We love just to open the dialogue so that we can all, you know, understand each other a little bit better.
Absolutely. And you can also reach us on our Instagram, which is Human Collective Podcast, no spaces or dashes, just as it sounds. We're also on Twitter, which is at human_collective with no E on the end. So human_collective. You can also email us if maybe you have someone interesting you'd like us to look at and possibly have a guest on our show. We have the ability to have a virtual guest. So you can be anywhere in the world and we can see you right here on the screen and share you or someone you know with our viewers. So that's important to note, and we're always looking for new and interesting people to talk to and bring to the discussion.
Yeah. Slide in our DMs.
Slide in our DMs.
All right.
So, all right, so that's it. So we'll wrap this one up, and I just want to thank everyone again for tuning in to Human Collective. It has been quite a journey, and we've got a long journey ahead of us. I'm looking forward to episode 500, and we can look back on this and be like, wow, we really came a long way. Yeah. So we're not going anywhere, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. This has been another episode of Human Collective. We will see you again on Wednesday. All right. I'm Moshe.
And I'm Polly.
And this was the Human Collective. Thanks, guys.
Take
Cheers.
care. Bye.